This is Popular Front, a podcast focused on the niche details of modern warfare and underreported conflict with me, Jake Hanrahan. Today we're speaking to Illia Ponomarenko. He is a reporter from Ukraine. He's a defense reporter working for the Kiev Post. He's constantly back and forth to the front lines in East Ukraine. Today he's going to be telling us about the so-called longest ceasefire. Basically, the current ceasefire in Ukraine, in which around 40 Ukrainian servicemen have been killed in the space of a year, so not much of a ceasefire. Many killed on the other side as well. Ilya is going to explain to us how it's all developing there. If you like what we're doing, please support us at patreon.com/popularfront. So recently there's been a flare-up of clashes on the front line in the east. Obviously there have been deaths on both sides. What's going on? Maybe just explain to us what's happening this time around.
You know, what's happening is that very usual running of this endless war. You know, this is what it haven't looked like in years. Nothing special. You know, Donbass, the war zone of Donbass since maybe 2015 is the place where time stands still. You know, this is what it looks like. You know, the World War I in miniature, in like a small version of it. It's just two lines standing, two armies standing. No one's moving forward, no one's moving back. So, and this cat and mouse, this fighting, endless fighting, relentless fighting goes on and on and on and on with no results at all. No, it's not about maneuvers. It's not about trying to kick each other out from certain location. This is how it goes. You know, both sides, they compete for certain locations, certain spots in the no man's land between the lines. So for sniper spots, for potential observation points, for whatever makes you feel in advantage over the enemy. And both sides, especially when it comes to Ukrainian side, they need to do to continue with this cat and mouse game of small squads, because if you're not doing this, if you're not taking up like dominant terrains or convenient observation points in no man's land, you ought to suffer. So, and obviously you don't want this. So this goes on and on and on. And this warfare, this logic of static warfare, it has become long ago like a self-sustaining process. So it can last forever, absolutely forever, without any prospects of any end in sight. So what looks like in escalation and fighting is just the very sporadic, very usual splashes of fighting here and there. The small fighting of small squads, 3-4 people, the fighting of recon units, sniper warfare is what takes a lot of lives. So it goes on and on and on and on. You know, recently, what needs to be said is that recently, it's like 3 or 4 days ago, we kind of marked the first anniversary of this longest ceasefire that was promoted by President Zelensky. It started on July 27th last year, so it lasted 1 year, and over this last year of this longest ceasefire, we lost 45 soldiers killed in action. That's the officially recognized, confirmed combat-related death toll.
So 45 soldiers killed in 1 year.
Yes, that's we're talking about confirmed combat-related casualties. And apart from that, we have a lot of casualties from landmines, from war zone fires. Not directly combat-related, but if we include probably non-combat related casualties, we would have more than 50 soldiers killed, and also more than 150 injured in action. So that's the price of this ceasefire, so-called ceasefire.
It doesn't sound like a ceasefire to me.
So yes, and then upon that, this latest ceasefire, as we call it, the longest ceasefire, ironically, unless my memory fails me, this is the 22nd or 23rd attempt to impose a sort of ceasefire in Donbass. So, it was a bit of success in the year 2020, when by the end of the year, between late July and the end of the year, we lost only 4 soldiers killed, mostly by snipers. But starting from January, February, it all returned to the same pace again. Same static warfare, claiming nearly a dozen soldiers, Ukrainian soldiers on Ukrainian side every month. So we end up by the second half, we now run on the second half of the year, so we end up having at least 45 fatalities. So this is how it looks like in Donbass. It's endless cat and mouse game. Nothing changes. Time stops. Every single time I get deployed to the war front with soldiers, I basically have nothing to write about except for the atmosphere of routine, of war routine, and the soldier life, because nothing principal happens there. No major operations. It's just a static, very scheduled, very routine life of endless war. Just as simple as that. So this is why, in many ways, Western media sleeps. It pays so little attention to this war because nothing happens here, and this is where the time stands still at all. This is a terrible feeling, to see.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you mean. It seems like nothing is happening. Obviously, there's no ground is being taken. There's no ground is being lost. However, lives are being lost, young men are dying out there still. What are the soldiers' reactions when you're out there on the front talking to them? What do they think of all this?
What soldiers feel after these 7 years of war, it's one of the greatest mysteries to me, because, after all these 7 years, most of which they passed in this static warfare without any clear prospects in sight. And, Ukrainian lines, Ukrainian troops, they feel so confident about their job. So I would expect in such a warfare to demoralize troops. This endless stand and standoff. I would expect it to get demoralized quickly and to decompose. In terms of fighting power, but they feel okay. This is one of the greatest mysteries to me. They feel okay. They still stand. They know they have to stand. They have to stay strong. They have to fulfill their duties, and they do. Year after year, many people served for many years, for 5 years, 6 years. Often they do not get back to the rear with the fighting units, so they simply switch their fighting units so they could stay at the front line and go on fighting and serve the combat duties. So they feel absolutely okay. They do the job. They day after day they serve the 4-hour duties. They feel absolutely okay about this. They do not. They are not afraid of this lack of any perspective, any victory, or even any defeat. So they simply do their job in a good way. And this is not what I would have expected in a war like this, because of so many reasons. We have in history, we have so many examples of armies simply rotting from inside because of this standoffs and lacks of perspective and lacks of all hope. But this is not what happens to Ukrainian military somehow. I don't know why.
It's a weird situation though, like for them, because they're not fighting for victory as such. I mean, I know obviously they have to be there to defend the land, but they're just kind of clocking in. You know what I mean? It's almost like a 9 to 5, but it's a war. But with no end in sight, it's just so unusual. You know what I mean?
Yes. And what's upon that is that since we have this weird phony ceasefire, they have a lot of restrictions, formal restrictions posed upon them. It's like in many cases they have to be responsible for opening fire in return for returning fire. So in many instances, local commanders on the ground, they have to take liberty and order their people to return fire. So it's always a pressure from military bureaucrats because they have to explain or they have to make a decision whether to return or not to return fire, because we're having a ceasefire. And upon that, Defense Ministry, they recently introduced this policy of encouraging troops not to return fire, not to take liberty in action when the enemy does something, and not everyone is really happy about this. So in many cases, local commanders on the ground, they have to go against certain regulations and impose their own rules of engagement. So yes, and this whole pressure in his pressing environment, I'm really surprised. I see it time after time. I get deployed to the front line, how stiff they are, how committed they are. I think if I were them, I would give up on this mess of this lack of respect to their lives, but they still protect the land. And what's bad for them is that they are being like professional good soldiers, are normally deployed with real good combat formations, is that they are not allowed to perform like major operations. So what they have to do is to simply stand and wait for commands if something happens.
And when there's obviously, I think in the last week, I was reading one of your articles about recently, I think there have been 3 Ukraine soldiers killed and then more on the other side as well. How are these clashes happening? Because no one's trying to take ground, right? Like, how do they actually happen? What's the dynamic on the ground when these clashes break out?
Well, it's the case when, for instance, I get deployed to the most dangerous frontline sections. In May, I was near Horlivka, which was probably the hottest ground. And what happens is that before sunrise, there can be some shooting, and also after dark, in the night. So everybody wakes up and some skirmishes start. In daylight, no one cares. No one's fighting, almost never. So soldiers, they do not even wear their vests or helmets. So day is not the time for fighting. But when the darkness comes, especially when it comes to locations where the enemy lines are pretty close to each other, or they stuck in close quarters. So yes, mostly they fight in the night. But then again, what happens in the night is these attempts to gain dominant grounds or put what they call the eyes, the observation points, like small observation points, so that you could see what the enemy is doing. So this is what mostly happens in the night on both sides. So this is how it looks like. The after dark comes and the showdown starts. In the day, for instance, in the daylight, what happens is mostly sniper fire. You should keep your head down most of the time. But also there's the novelty of this war, like small drones. Sometimes in commercial drones you can buy at any shop. So they simply put a grenade or small bombs on it. So they simply send these cheap aerial non-manned aerial vehicles, so they could simply drop a bomb. So I witnessed this many times. So that's mostly for the daylight.
And what are they still using mortars? Last time I was there, it was just constant mortar rounds. Is that still a thing?
They will prescribe us this Minsk ceasefire, the heavy artillery, anything that is more than 100 millimeter caliber. But yes, this is what happens. From the enemy side, they mostly use this heavy weapons, mortars, for instance. I saw just scores of impact holes, fresh impact holes. I can't even remember how many times I had to seek cover from mortar fire. But sometimes, what happens is that many Ukrainian units, they also take initiative. So they, in some sort of ways, they defy these rules of ceasefire. So they return fire with their own mortars that they keep as close as possible. For instance, once I got deployed with Azov regiment, the notorious group. But them being Azov, they prefer to play aggressively. Like they defy many military rules of engagement. that say, for instance, do not engage first, do not attack, stay clear, avoid fighting. So what they do is normally they play aggressively. For instance, if they see, they observe the enemy, and if they see the slightest movements, the slightest attempts to enhance their earthworks or defenses, so they simply fire. They open fire. They start the crossfire, and then they kill the enemy with mortars. So in many ways, it's all on the discretion of the unit that stands on the particular ground. But at the same time, many military units from the army, I mean, not from the National Guard, but from the army, so they keep the ground. For instance, the legendary Pramzona, which is the industrial ground, it's a ruined industrial complex just south of the city of Avdiivka. It's the iconic place for any military or defense journalists. So they keep probably the most important ground, one of the most important hotspots of this war. And what Troop says is that we got the order just to stand clear and do not seek any trouble. So this is what we do. No fighting. So we're not looking for trouble. So we simply stand firm, and that's what we do. They do not prefer to engage, to show initiative. So yes, it depends a lot on the unit and the particular spot.
Sure. I don't think a lot has changed. I don't think I've been to the front line for about 3 years now, and it doesn't sound like anything has changed. It's really depressing, actually.
Yes, it's one of the most depressing things is that while these people, our guys and our men and women, they hold in the ground, and meanwhile, it's all about politicians right now. It's all about their choices, and it feels like this whole front line, which is, by the way, almost as long as the Western Front of World War One. It's Jesus. Pretty close. Yeah. I was surprised to realize that it's pretty close in terms of its length. So it feels like a different world. It's so isolated in terms of troubles, in terms of news, in terms of what bothers usual soldiers. For instance, I came to the front line, got deployed with a fighting unit during the COVID outrage, probably the worst days, and they cared so little about this. They were asking me, "What's the trouble about this? We heard some news on the radio. What's the trouble in this? We don't care because we have our world here. It's like a different planet." And when I got back there, it always feels like the war on the ground, the hot war, the fighting war is over. What decides this whole ordeal with Donbass is the diplomatic war. What happens, in the upper layers, and it always hurts to realize that pretty much these people in uniforms, they are not to decide, to have the final say in this war. So it's all now on politicians, unfortunately, and diplomatic level, chances are not good for us, unfortunately.
Yeah. And what is the political stance right now? Because obviously this so-called longest ceasefire has been pretty much a failure. There's more than one soldier dying a month for a whole year. That doesn't sound like a ceasefire to me. I think by anybody's standard, that's a failure. What is the government response to that?
What they have chosen the strategy of, having a bad ceasefire is better than having a good war, full-fledged war. This was embraced by Zelensky administration, but government, especially when it comes to the earliest months of this ceasefire, like second half of the last year. So this is what we are saying. We have lost only 4 soldiers over these months instead of something like 25 soldiers, which is the normal pace of this war, normal death toll. And they still keep, promoting this ceasefire, gaining political points for this ceasefire, just because, they present this as the better alternative to not having any sort of ceasefire. But of course, Ukrainian public media, they are not quite happy. They are not satisfied with this explanation. But we still we still lose more than 40 soldiers a month, and most of them, most of these fatalities, they are we sustain them not in actual battle, not in actual fire exchanges or operations. It's all about sniper fire or mortar fire, shelling. In many ways, just because our defenses, our groundworks are so fragile, so weak because of corruption, because of poor financing. It's always, it's not always, but sometimes it is the case. It's not a surprising thing is that when a mortar shell hits a dugout and kills absolutely everyone inside. For instance, it's the normal case. For instance, two soldiers seeking cover in the dugout, so we have a direct impact. Everyone is inside is smashed. Just because after 7 years of war and an immense defense budget, we still have our defenses weak and fragile. And this claims like 90% of fighting. Another thing is sniper fire. So they failed to provide our troops with counter-sniper measures, counter-sniper instruments. So this is what hurts, really hurts. It's just about, our soldiers in many ways, they're forced to embrace this feeling of just standing in the crosshairs.
It's always the soldiers that end up, bearing the brunt of it. I remember even being in Kiev, though. It's like even public opinion was unusual. It was almost as if people in Kiev had forgotten the war in the east. Do you think that's still the same, or what?
That's still the same. In many ways, this is not an unusual situation. This is what continues since the active phase of war ended. It's like 2015, maybe. It's a normal situation for the last 5-6 years. Donbass war, I'm from Donbass originally. I'm a local guy in Donbass. And, many people call in media, they call it like a quarantine or isolated war, because after you drive something like 15-20 minutes from the front line, you will see no signs of any war at all. So it is really concentrated in some pretty tiny area along this line, the separation line. So, and beyond that, no signs of war at all, even for the locals. I grew up and lived for most of my life in the city of Volnovakha, which is like 15-20 kilometers west to the front line. So if you come to my hometown, you would see no signs of war at all. It's just the usual life. Same goes about the cities beyond the front line in the occupied territory. So it's really restricted. It's really concentrated, and beyond this immediate war zone, so you'll get no signs of war at all. So that's why, obviously, this affects media space, the news from this war. Also, this lack of dynamics, this lack of sharp news or breaking news from this war. Of course, people tend to ignore troubles, ignore that something that upsets them. People tend to look forward more to more positive and normal life. So war has long ago become a matter of a handful of people concerned about this: journalists, activists, volunteers, military activists. So this is how it looks. I'm almost sure that in any other country in the same situation, we would have seen the pretty similar public opinion about this.
Yeah. No, I think you're probably right. People are generally docile, especially in my country. No one cares about anything the government does. I mean, they make a noise for a minute and that's it.
Many people in media in Ukraine, they're bitching about this. They are really annoyed about this, that the world doesn't care, that we do not have many journalists covering this conflict, only in some sharp moments like we had during this Russian military buildup, and New York Times came here and had stories. But on the other side, I clearly understand that we have nothing to write about, and we are pretty egocentric if you allow me. So we want attention, but we really miss this understanding of that we are not alone in this world. For instance, when I come to NATO headquarters, I see NATO Secretary General and also defense ministers from all across Europe discussing Afghanistan, Syria, Mediterranean Sea, and I keep trying to get a question on Ukraine all the time. Every time I get deployed for something into Brussels, so the Ukrainian team, like a journalistic pool, they always encourage me to get through and get a question to on Ukraine to Stoltenberg. So, but sometimes just we need to understand that we're not alone in this world, and the world is full of trouble. So
yeah, I hear you, but still, it's turning into like a forever war. You know, the only like ongoing active conflict in Europe, and it's, I don't know, people have forgotten about it. But again, like you said, like obviously I'm a reporter, I cover conflict, so in my head it's a very big deal, but others don't think so. You mentioned the Russian military buildup there. That happened earlier this year. It was looking very bad for a minute. Everyone was kind of worried, like, oh my God, are they going to launch an offensive? What happened with that? What was going on?
Oh, that was a weird story.
Yeah.
It happened in late March, early April. To be honest, this was the first time when even I was a bit scared, to be honest. Yeah. We had such a apocalyptic atmosphere in Kiev, to the point that Kiev city authorities, they started releasing maps of air bomb shelters.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I had a spot story about this, and this was a bit frightening. To the point, even military journalists focused on defense, they started asking me and the other people questions like, "What do you think about this?" So I'm not even talking about more usual people reading news every day. So the atmosphere in Kiev, especially when it comes to media, this media environment was pretty doomsday. We were waiting for this. Even at some point, I tried to persuade myself that this is not going to happen. I mean, this is so insane that it's too insane even for Russians, even this situation. But I was pretty ready for this war. Even though I realized my feeling was that they are bluffing because of many reasons. But what I used to say to my fellow journalists, also my friends, is that we should not expect any like major war, but we also should have some space for simple stupidity, simple stupidity of dictators like Putin. So thanks God, there was no major war, but still, as our intelligence says, and Western intelligence says, they have not withdrawn all of their troops from Ukraine. So the concentration of troops is still pretty intense.
So they sent hundreds of troops to the border, right? Maybe just explain what was going on. What were they actually doing that had everybody so worried?
Well, what was worrying is that it all started like really quickly and rapidly and suddenly. Most of the people who do not follow the schedule of Russian military drills, and it was so they according to intelligence, they concentrated at least 100,000 troops in Ukrainian territory. Within Ukrainian territory, I mean the occupied Crimea and also Donbass, and also around eastern Ukraine. I had two problems about this. Is that on one hand, we always knew where the major Russian bases are. For instance, Voronezh Oblast and also Rostov. The biggest concentration of their regular troops. So there was nothing surprising about this. But that's only to a handful of people who follow Russian military buildup. But also, this what was worrying is that they started bringing troops from military districts other than Western district. It's like Central district. They had the 58th Army deployed into Voronezh. So that was pretty weird. And they also had this battlefield medical facilities. It's like something that they would deploy during actual live fire operations. But on the other side, it was so in your face, so demonstrative, so aggressive, so supported by really aggressive rhetorics on the highest level in the Kremlin. So I saw this as a real military buildup that was hugely enhanced. Its effect was hugely enhanced by media and also by this fear spreading, fear mongering, and also the aggressive rhetorics from the Kremlin. But what was comforting is that this whole build-up, this whole maneuver was so in your face. And also they lacked strategic maneuvers. So this was comforting. So they gave many of us this feeling of that is nothing but bluff, political bluff.
What do you think they were doing then? Do you think Russia were gonna attack and then something just persuaded them not to, and they thought, nah, next time? Or do you think this was just a bluff to scare Ukrainians? And if so, why?
I do think that's bluff, but it's all because many reasons. I mean, yes, they're keen to stupid things, but I see no real point in invading Ukraine. It's not even possible for them, I believe. From the very beginning, that was a political bluff before the West, before Ukrainian leadership that got out of control in many ways. I believe they had a lot of hope on Zelensky administration to be more flexible, to be more keen to control, to be more possible to negotiate with in terms of Ukraine. But Zelensky administration turned out to be not as easy as Putin believed it to be. So that was a big bluff, and also in many ways that was the game for internal Russian audience. So Putin is losing his popularity in Russia. So in many ways he needs to sustain his leader of wartime president, this image of wartime president inside the inside the surrounded fortress that is Russia. It plays a lot on the Russian audience, internal Russian audience, and also he feels comfortable. He and his circles, they feel comfortable in this wartime warmongering atmosphere. So, yes, but I believe right from the very start this was more of a political game, but also a bit of a serious warning to Ukrainian leadership that they need to move towards some sort of a deal on Donbass, on many other ways, Ukrainian future with the West, with NATO. So yes, turns out there was no war, but more of a political stuff in this.
Yeah, in England, we would say it's kind of crass, but we'd say like it's dick swinging. You know what I mean? It's kind of Putin saying, "Hey, like I can do it." Like a warning. You know what I mean?
Yes, but if we simply look at it with the cold heads, we had a story. We consulted military strategists and also people who used to be like high-ranking generals who with good military education. So they had three suggestions where Russians could strike, like three directions of the main strike. Is that from the south it's Odessa, Crimea, from north to Kiev, and also from the east it's Donbass, and then Kharkiv, then Dnipro, and so that they could surround the Ukrainian military group in eastern Ukraine, which is strongest. So they simply could destroy Ukrainian military, the armed forces as a whole, in just one big single operation. But what's next? The occupation of such a populated and such a big country, I don't think it was the ultimate goal, and population is not friendly. So it was the Iraq war. says a lot about this. So yeah, they could destroy Ukrainian military, but then what's next? I think, and many people in Ukraine and beyond Ukraine, we also consulted with foreign specialists. Many people think that they would simply stick in a war that they cannot win.
Things are very different now, like the military is very well experienced now. They're well trained now. It's not the same as when they first invaded. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's definitely not 2014. We have our problems with the standing army, the Serbian military right now, but we also have a lot of motivated and angry and experienced combat veterans in civilian life. And believe me, they will be ready to take up the arms and fight. And they will be angry. In the darkest hour, in the times of trouble, we Ukrainians, we have proved our tendency to get this like a national outbreak, national rise, just like we had in 2014. We have from the scratch, we have resurrected the military. We have formed a lot of volunteer battalions without any outside help. So they were self-formed. There's just a usual initiative from usual civilians. Many of them did not even never served in the military. So I believe a big military invasion of Russia would simply precipitate even greater national rise, even more guerrilla, even more volunteer battalions, nationalistic forces, and not necessarily. So they would have a lot of troubles here. So that's why I never believed that a possible invasion could justify any goal in Russians. So what's the point behind this? They already blocked our path to NATO. They have already blocked our path to West, and we do not have any successful reforms in terms of defense. So what's the point in invading this country?
Yeah, no, I definitely hear what you're saying. I think it would be honestly a big mistake for them to do so, just, having seen the situation play out. Good luck out there, man. And thank you very much for doing this. Where can people find your work and find you on social media and all of that?
That's pretty. You can find me anywhere: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, any messenger. So
cool. And it's ILLIAPONOMARENKO.
Yeah, same spelling, absolutely same spelling anywhere.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, mate. Appreciate this.
Thank you.
That was Illia Ponomarenko talking about another failed ceasefire in East Ukraine. Very depressing, but I think necessary to keep reporting on it because everyone else seems to have kind of forgotten. Illia Ponomarenko, definitely check him out. If you like what we're doing here at Popular Front, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/popularfront. There's loads of bonus episodes there. There are about 2 a month. I think we've got almost 100 bonus episodes now. So there's a lot of stuff there for you waiting. Also, you get regular episodes early, access to the community Discord, merchandise, discount codes, narrated articles, access to the Too Cool for J School series, and we will be doing another I don't want to say documentary series. We're going to be doing a series soon coming to the Patreon, which will basically be kind of looking into some of the world's most obscure militant groups. It'll be kind of a graphic-led thing. That'll be coming to the Patreon, patreon.com/popularfront. Thank you very much to our sponsors on this episode. They are Oracle Coffee Shop in Portland, Oregon, USA, an independent coffee business selling only fair trade products. See them at 3875 Southwest Bond Avenue, 97239. Be sure to tell them Popular Front sent you. Thank you to Grindcore House, a pair of independent coffee shops in Philadelphia, USA. One in South, one in West. Find them on socials at Grindcore House. The episode's also sponsored by Propagandopolis, an outlet selling and writing about historical conflict propaganda from around the world. Buy prints at propagandopolis.com. Use the promo code POPULARFRONT10 for 10% off. And check out the limited run of Popular Front prints that are up there. Some of our photo work from across various different conflict zones. Propagandopolis.com. If you want to follow us on social media, Twitter is @PopularFrontCO, Instagram @popular.front, YouTube youtube.com/popularfront, the website popularfront.co, merchandise popularfront.shop. If you want to follow me anywhere, it's @Jake_Hanrahan, HANRAHAN, same as my website, jakehanrahan.com. You can get in touch that way. Music in this episode, the intro was by Home and the outro was by Sam Black. Thank you very much to our high tier Patreons. They are Elise Middlefat, Jess, David McManus, Joaquim Williamson Holt, Yode Travis, Tom Petrie, James Leons, Kate Ellen, Dan Ross, Thumper, Lisa Milgram, Bradley Davies, Brendan Crave, Peter Hesher, RX, A. Nicole, Travis Lieberman, Cherry, Ben Marshall, Dallas Dunn, LD50 Seattle, MJ, Meredith Waters, Adam H, Larson 8669, Karante, Bjorn Kirsten, Diamondstein, Jacob, Michael O'Connor, Zach Packard, Todd Cravens, Alexander, Nicholas Butter, Ron Swanson, JD, Jav, Ian Froese, James Cully, Tynan Daly, Ethan, Fitz Madrid, Ed Coulthard, Clayton Taylor, Mike Barone, Ben, Liam Williams, Chris Cusimano, Degenerate Zero Alpha, Giorgio Arani, DR, Trey Nance, Amy R, Rubicon, Frank Austin, Amelia Me, Noah Ease, Christina Ravetti, Freya Northman, Ali Hunter, Moody Al Rashid, Bill Wilson, Andrew Hurley, Vida Provost, Brian McLaughlin, Tom Lochrin, Young Wasabi, Tony Bin, Adam Bergsnyder, JL, Anthony Kobarek, Dan Dunham, Fletcher, Chad Walker, Diana Gorvanek, Lawrence Abrahams, Peter McCormick from What Bitcoin Did, Axel Iverson, Christopher Martin, Ryan Sandercock, and Moritz Zumbul. Thank you all very much. If you want to support us, go to patreon.com/popularfront or popularfront.co/support.